You know, my channel kinda got started with the Persona series back in the day, and I sure hope whoever's viewing this doesn't go back and watch those videos. They are very old with spoilers and are honestly not very helpful at all. But what could one do? The passage of time comes for all of us in the end. Anyway, a few weeks ago, I saw my own Persona 3 for beginners in my recommendations for some godforsaken reason, and noticed it was 9 years old, and then I felt time smack me right in the crust. Good God, they were so long ago. Oh, how I've changed. Oh, how Persona 3 has changed too. Well, considering I just beat the remake not too long ago, I thought I'd remake my silly little video, in a sense, by giving all the lowdown on Reload. If only to bide my time for the inevitable For Beginners video, cause the DLC is around the corner, and I'm more interested in waiting to cover the complete package. In due time, of course. You know, just let me simmer with it for a little bit, okay? But for now, let me just tell you what I think of Reload, cause P3 be back, and so am I. Out with the old and in with the new So pickle me surprised when the long-rumored remake of Persona 3 was very much real and it looked kinda great, especially when Instagram told us about it 3 days before it actually was supposed to be announced. Fun times! But like a lot of folks, my biggest hope for the remake was to finally get a version to address the Persona 3 problem. You see, there are multiple versions of the game, each version with its own unique set of pros, cons, and content. So for the longest time, many folks have been praying for one version to rule them all. A remake that would combo every version together to be the end-all say-all of P3. But instead, we just got another version of P3. This is what we like to call an Atlas moment. You get something good and delicious, but at what cost? While also missing the biggest opportunity advertised on the world's loudest billboard. Like, I know it's a lot of work and it's expensive and they have other things to do, but it's work worth doing. Oh, what could have been. So with the announcement of Reload, there went the unified P3 once and for all dream, but without getting too deep into it, Persona 3 Reload is basically a remake of Persona 3 FES from the PlayStation 2. Now, the main question is, how do these versions compare to each other? Well, here's the thing about directly comparing and contrasting versions in my humble, doughish opinion. We have the technology to see these things side by side in real time and pinpoint exactly where things differ. This kind of clarity quickly highlights discrepancies, and now we're in a back and forth conversation on which version is better and if this rendition is faithful with big, objective, bold lettering. So if we're talking about keeping the original Persona 3 experience completely intact, Reload do not be checking off all those boxes. The color atmosphere is different, the gameplay is drastically overhauled, the furniture is proportional, the story beats got bumped, the presentation was lockin' as compared to poppin' now. All of these differences are noticeable, arguable, comparable. In fact, there are some great vids out there that talk about all the differences between the various versions of P3 in detail. Links below. However, in this direct comparison observation, we are very much removed from the actual gaming experience of each version because most players don't play two versions synced up at the same time. They play one version before they play the other, wholly reliant on memory in the moment to paint them a picture. So the direct comparison third eye ultra view is not really a factor for someone who's just trying to enjoy some P3 vibes. And that's when keeping the original experience intact is exchanged for just making a smoother feeling game. You see, I love me some P3 FES on the PlayStation 2, beaten it a few times, shed a few tears, and my initial playthrough is a core memory of my high school experience. Shout out to my pal Ollie for lending me their copy back in 11th grade, by the way. But when I played Reload, it had been about a decade since I played FES, so the details were kinda hazy. Vague, specifics unknown. All I really remembered were essentially the bones of my original experience. And that's where I think the success of Reload lies, is that it's got all the bones, and then some. Obviously, my experience varies widely compared to folks who have the original fresh in their mind, but to me, Reload easily captures the positives of the original while smoothing out the story pacing and gameplay loop with modern standards. Now, I am your average Persona fan, but for many folks, Reload will probably be their first time experiencing P3. community, whether they are coming from the Persona 5 high or are just trying the series for the first time. And Reload is very welcoming in that regard. It reworked everything it could to onboard folks into the familiar Persona flow. Persona 5 sensibilities are absolutely radiating through this thing for sure, but these changes are still very fitting for the P3 experience since the rinse and repeat, Tartarus by night, school life by day routine stays the same. Now you're just going through it on a fresh pair of roller skates instead of classic Heelys. At the end of the day for you seasoned folks, your preference on which version is better is 100% valid either way. Truly, from the bottom of my heart, I mean that. But one of these has a way stronger chance of rolling through gravel, if you know what I mean. But what are the bones of Persona 3? Well, you got your fresh, hot-off-the-train high school transfer student, a sudden supernatural experience to a nightmarish degree, new roommates eager to teach you gun safety at midnight, and a secluded dorm room to call home for a whole calendar year. Your student loan officer stalks you in your bed, your long-nosed spirit guide stares at you in your dreams, and everyone in school thinks you're the coolest dude alive. 'Cause you are. And you got the blue hair to prove it. Soon after moving in, your dorm mates rope you into their little school club to combat the dark hour, a sliver of time between the end and beginning of each day where only folks with the
Potential
can operate, aka folks with personas. Everyone else just gets an instant coffin nap for a little bit, don't worry about it. Your main objective is to explore Tartarus, a massive multi-layer tower that pops up during the dark hour that also happens to be your school. Don't worry about it. So through the power of your persona and shooting yourself in the head with a totally not real gun, we promise, the cast sets out to defeat shadows and discover the mysteries of Tartarus, hoping to put an end to all the depressing vibes lately. Because folks aren't just becoming depressed, they're getting advanced depression, aka apathy syndrome. They have a whole other name for it. You know, it's okay if I get hit by a bus right now, I'm a zombie, I want to die. So the premise is the classic normal school life by day, dungeon crawling, demon slaying by night. Going through each day, picking and choosing how you spend your time, rather it be hanging with friends, a part-time job, solo karaoke, or getting down with duck burgers. It's all very routine-based while chipping away at an overarching mystery. Major story events happen every full moon, and in between you're balancing time killing shadows and hanging out with friends. There's a lot of mundane downtime, but there are enough activities and character moments that everyone's day-to-day calendar will be unique to an extent. Persona 3 really established the modern Persona formula folks know and love today. These are the bones that birth bold and brash boys, after all, and possibly another girl if we're lucky. Comboed with the long story length, the structure and pacing of P3 really does feel like a season of your life. It's one of the reasons why the Persona series is so loved, because you literally spend each day of a whole year with the characters, gradually seeing relationships grow and bloom, mix in with the horrors of Shadow War. The organic pacing can help form a deep level of attachment to the experience, so by the time the credits roll, you're almost nostalgic for the beginning. This has been the winning formula for over a decade now, obviously mixed in with different flavors throughout the years, but this be the same juice folks are addicted to. Persona 3 FES was very formative for my artistic taste as a teenager, and Reload has only reaffirmed my palate, if you will. Basically, it's still the same juice when you boil it down. But anyway, when it comes to the story, the theme is death. The game beats you over the head with it, cause blue! Blue is everywhere, and blue is the color of death, like the blue screen of death, but for reals. The emo is rooted right to the core, like all of the emo that came before. But seriously, death is like a top 3 universal constant. It has a story in everyone's life, and it comes for all of us one day. Kinda peak relatability when you think about it. But you mix those heavy themes in with some anime tropes, arcana symbolism, and memorable characters, you got yourself a sturdy Persona story, baby. There's a lot that can be said about the plot relating to the logistics of the Dark Hour and the events leading up to the current situation, and how engineers basically got to sprout human soul into a teenage robot. But all of that stuff aside, the real focus is how each individual character deals with a form of loss, and how they choose to persevere in the face of a lost cause. This is very much a rendition of how to pro-tag your way out of crippling depression for dummies. Ultimately, you are here to bond with folks over their life problems and eventually use their energy to defeat darkness and conquer doomsday apathy or whatever. The how of the plot is really secondary to the character motivations and thematic expression, and Persona 3 has a great cast. Always has. Definitely a trendsetter for for everything that came after, with its own special flavor of weirdos. Like, where my Strega heads at? Anybody? Anybody? Any Revolver Jesus stands out there? Make yourself known, now's your chance. But Reload really shines the brightest with the addition of new character bonding activities with all of the C's members. I can't overstate how wonderful these moments are. The activities vary from night walks, cooking, reading, gardening, and watching TV. These are all things roommates actually do, so they all fit snugly in your day-to-day routine, and they are excellent subtle bonding moments that put the characters' personalities on full display. Not to mention, these basically act as social link substitutes for the boys, since they didn't have any in FES. Also, more time spent with Mitsuru proves to me that she is secretly a 20-something-year-old pretending to be in high school. For what reasons, we'll never know. But in these moments, the mask is slipping. Now, some scenes are a little on the nose with the Persona meme references to the point I feel like I'm watching a parody of the character, like here's your obligatory Akihiko protein joke for the 7th time, and I swear to God, this Ken coffee inclusion is a direct reference to the Hi, I'm Daisy Persona 4 comics.
Adding milk and sugar is nice, but I usually take it black, of course.
Cream and sugar?
What are you, Nanako?
It wouldn't be the first time this has happened. It's kind of popular amongst the localization team, it seems. Great taste, fellas, but you are flying awfully close to the moon here, don't you think? Regardless of the occasional ham, though, I have never been so jazzed to hang out with my roomies and give my good boy some brushies. For reals, every extra moment spent with Koromaru tacks on a few days to my lifespan. His presence is legitimately healing, and I would happily delete Morgana and Teddy from their games if I could spend more time with him. There has never been a better boy. Anyway, the hangouts just make the time spent in the dorm feel so organic and homely, and I just love him so much. It's a great way to fill the space, too, because P3 does have several stretches where the main plot kind of goes through the motions where very little happens in the case of major revelations, so these extra scenes make all of the difference during that downtime. Overall, there's just more content to help you get invested into the characters, which is all the more important when that investment is later weaponized against you and the emotional devastation is cranked up to 10,000% pain straight through the heart. And on the opposite side of pain, some of the more awkward, mean-spirited scenes have been adjusted a little bit to actually be funny this time around. It's great stuff, and nothing of value was lost. Now, the social link likability disparity has always been kind of hilarious in this game. You're either surrounded by goofy little freaks, stubborn himbos, professional whiners, unlucky victims, or the bestest, most precious people in the whole wide world. Honestly, Persona 3's greatest sin is not letting me date Bebe, cause what the hell, Atlas? What, you can't handle a little French high-key, one of the things I love about this game is how ruthlessly mean and callous you can be in conversation.
You don't need to be a dick about it.
But normally, to make the quickest progress with each social link, it is often best to just feed into their delusion. Everyone gets their own series of shenanigans, so you're just the hype man until harsh reality punches them in the face. But whoever you end up gravitating towards, everyone's circumstantial arc goes full circle straight into the theme of finding that little shrivel of hope in a sea of death and despair. And normally, friendship is that hope, and possibly an inappropriate relationship. But the backbone of the Double Life dance is the dungeon-crawling turn-based combat, which has been tremendously tweaked to modern standards. Now, the rinse-and-repeat Tartarus climbing is as consistent as ever. The floors change styles and layouts, but functionally, the process is the same. Climb floors, kill enemies, reach floor gate, fight a full moon boss, and then do it all over again once the gate is open at a later date. Only difference is that enemies get weirder, bigger, and tougher as you climb. But with the removal of the fatigue system and with the addition of breakable goodies, monad passages, twilight fragments, level jump clocks, lost person rescues, and a few other things, the gameplay repetitiveness is alleviated a lot and adds way more ways to min-max your Tartarus visits. Now look, we all see the obvious, but I really don't think it's much of a dig to say that Reload plays an awful lot like Persona 5. You know, the game that was praised for its fun, slick turn-based combat because it incrementally improved from its predecessors. Remember? I know there are some mechanical choices made in the original Persona 3 to better affirm the themes, but I think I can speak for most people when I say I like having direct control over my turns in a turn-based game. Persona 3 Portable also understood that sentiment, but the special ace up of Reload's sleeves are the Thurgy attacks, which I am actually a big fan of. These are essentially ultimates/fusion spells/limit breaks/whatever the hell you want to call them. But they are flashy, symbolic, and it's nice having a nuke in your back pocket in case of emergencies. Although, one thing I keep hearing from some gamer circles is that reload is too easy, or that certain moves and perks are too broken. And when you witness Ken use Divine Intervention for the first time, I can kinda see where they're coming from, because good God, nothing but the Almighty is gonna touch this party. Look at this thing! Is this allowed? But what does broken in an RPG really mean? To me, this is a matter of perspective. RPGs are all about builds and loadouts, and the cardinal rule of an RPG is if you take the time to work your way to a bigger number than the other guy, you win. This is not winning with the power of friendship or raw skill, this is just math. The question now is, should every fight be a paper-thin close call to force you to use everything, regardless of your level or loadout? Or should the game reward you with ease for being efficient with your tools? The answer may forever elude us, until it's out on September 10th, 2024. Also, despite having way more convenient options, insights, and moves, you can still very much get a classic unlucky death in a standard encounter if you are not careful. Happened a few times in my playthrough. Lost an hour of progress and it hurt my soul. A lot. Please save, y'all. Please. The retry is only for the floor bosses, not for a standard encounter. Learned that the hard way, and I want my time back. Anyway, to me, the difficulty of these long story-driven games are kinda trivial. I'm more about seeing progress with my character. The time sink for the story alone is a big commitment for most folks, so that feeling of progression is really the only thing that's needed for my satisfaction, not massive hard challenge walls despite all of my prepping, you know? I like seeing the fruits of my grinding labor. I hit that grind gym to see big chunks come off my hits. I grew this killer mushroom with love, time, and care. It makes me happy to let him frolic. Look at those crits, baby. All homegrown. I don't know, maybe it's because we're in a post-Dark Souls world, but apparently everyone wants their nuts bashed in regardless of the game type or length nowadays. What's up with that? And for the record, I beat Reload on hard mode. I was cackling like a coconut during the final boss when I used my handcrafted maxed out Chernabog to knock whole phases off in one turn. Very cathartic because I earned those numbers, and I'ma make a Death Mama's problem. You know, Persona combat is often referred to by the gamers at large as watered down version of SMT because the turn-based rules aren't as brutal. But I counter that by saying the dungeon crawling is only half the gameplay. The other half is the life sim. Time management, stat building, and social link growing is the way of the game during the day. It's not particularly challenging, but there's a lot of decision making involved with a metric for success. Being time efficient and sociable greatly reinforces the Tartarus gameplay now, with new special character perks and the like. So I see the inclusion of these and the Thuriges as rewarding you for your routine efforts with big numbers going up, things dying faster, and your pals popping off in style. This type of gameplay integration was revered in Persona 5, and Reload greatly benefits from its inclusion because it just makes sense. It's a detail that marries these two sides. Spending time with the cast actually has an effect on how smooth the grind goes. And the grind! Oh, the grind has never been more smooth. I'm sliding all over the place, fellas. Watch out, here I go! Climbing a whole Tartarus chunk in a night is super doable now, and the Arcana card perks give you the option to fine-tune where your grind progress goes. It all adds to the combat being fun, with a fast sense of progression, and I dig it. Although I do miss the original shuffle time, if only because I like these kind of follow-the-card games. They made me feel really clever back in the day. But other than that, I thrive in a fully controllable environment, and that's what these options give me. We are minning like we've never maxed before, and it feels real damn good. In fact, a lot of this smooth ride can be attributed to the small quality of life improvements throughout the game. Rewind feature, save anywhere, quests and social link availability markers, travel menus, and a bunch of other stuff. All of these little features add up to pure convenience when you get down to it, which minimizes frustration and keeps you locked into the experience more. They also make it easier to see more of the game on a first playthrough, which I think is pretty important. Less days spent in Tartarus makes more time for social point progression, which lets you access high requirement social links earlier. Markers make it more obvious where there are story moments, quests, and social link availabilities, and the rewind feature can correct small mistakes while trying to min-max. For example, occasionally I would go to Tartarus, completely forgetting to activate my little perks at the nightclub, so I just hop into the rewind, go back a moment, and there you go, I fixed my problem. We're back on track. These little changes really be adding up to smooth sailing through the narrative sea, even if they do come at the cost of the authentic sandpaper experience of the original. But let's pull out from the details and get superficial, cause the place that Reload takes the biggest swings is in the presentation. Using the Unreal Engine, P3 Reload cements the stylistic standards folks expect out of their Atlas entries nowadays. But with a new facelift and camera work, there is a bigger reliance on in-engine cutscenes for important moments as compared to the original animated scenes, which are, starkly different in their aesthetics for sure. And warning, turn down your brightness now, cause dorm room flashbang! Like, holy saturation, yo, what happened here? We could go back and forth on this for a while and whip out the third eye ultra view nonstop, but to be brief, by no means is Reload struggling to be stylish. It's just rocking its own flavor. Love it or hate it, it's here. And the budget still comes to play with the occasional animated cutscenes. It's just a little odd with how selective it is with what does and doesn't get an animated cutscene this time around. Also, they gave C's new uniforms, and I love them. Slick, practical, battle-ready, and brandish. Makes sense you'd remember the Kirijo group is sponsoring C's, and clearly they got the money for some sick drip. Basically, I want one of these jackets. Now, the color themes have never been more prevalent, but the real eye candy comes from the graphic overlays, character portraits, and general menus. Lots of movement, shapes, and little taglines, but everything has a very clean-cut freshness to it. Like, the character portraits are so crisp, you can really see the subtleties in their expression. And then some. Love the water motifs, too. Complements the moon imagery and bold blues better than anything else. You like color theory? Reload's got color theory, baby. You know, it's a known fact that Atlas gives the UI extra special attention in their games, and they gotta be one of the few devs out there that put their menus and overlays into a trailer as a massive highlight. Looks so good, it's got the whole squad clapping every single time, I swear. Cause they really are rather mesmerizing, even after seeing the same sequence a billion times over. Kinda similar to the sound, too. We could get as deep as Lotus Juice's voice into this topic, but to be simple, the OST bangs. It bangs so hard, guys. The nostalgic beats I love are here, with a series of new remixes and entirely fresh tracks that fit right in. P3 has actually always been my favorite OST out of the series, and Reload does a sufficient job recreating the iconic sound. If not for a handful of weird notes and mixes, specifically, Mass Destruction sounds weaker because the chorus is being sung solo and it's not in unison anymore. Like, are you hearing what I'm hearing? And the starting note? Awkward. It's like purposefully off-key. Don't know what's up with that. It's like putting on your shoes backwards. Kind of relieved that Mass Destruction is not the default battle theme anymore. It alternates between the other song, which is quite good. Also, Reload is not helping Burn My Dread beat the Burn My Bread allegations anytime soon, because just listen to this.
I will.
It's almost like it's trying to be the meme. I feel like they told the singer, get into the booth and pronounce this D with the strongest bull emphasis that you possibly could muster without saying B. Where's the D? Where is the D in this word? This is, of course, direct comparison brain talking because these songs are as clear as day in my mind. Been ingrained in there to a subliminal level for over a decade. I'm bored waiting in a doctor's office. I'm flipping on OG Mass Destruction in high quality using my neurons and possibly wiping all out if I'm feeling a little feral. From what my ears were picking up, some notes just sound different for different sake, and in this sonic circumstance, don't fix what ain't broke, okay? Other than those kind of goofy blights on the OST, I am indeed bumping that to the rest of it. But what's really commendable about Reload is the voice work. This is actually the first Persona entry to have full voice work for every social link, and it's very noticeable. Words obviously do most of the work to build a character, but having a unique performance versus whatever I can make up in my head is way more endearing, personable, and captures my attention better. Yuko! Shout out to my girl Yuko. I've known you in the past, but I didn't know who you really were until I heard you. You're the best. The absolute best. Just tell me who to kill and I'll do it, baby girl. Atlas localizations are normally really well done, so once again, the voice work is top tier across the board. A good amount of the characters were completely recast, but the performances are either scarily similar to the original, or if they do sound different, they capture the spirit of the character to a T, like the testosterone they gave Akihiko.
Don't worry. I'm just getting a little practice.
Good God, what the hell are they putting in that protein? Like, I'm really not complaining here, but now I also think Akihiko is a 20-something pretending to be in high school. There's a conspiracy going on, y'all. But Fuka and Aigis specifically shot up my faves leaderboard because their new VAs better reflect their personalities and are more charming in general. Absolutely adore my girly pops, especially when they're a little silly and sassy. So comboed with the new voice work and more cinematic blocking, some scenes just be hitting harder emotionally. Like, I've known P3 Twist for a while, but I found myself crying at scenes I didn't before because the imagery and sounds added way more weight to the story beats. It's just way easier to care when the characters act like it's worth caring about, you know? It really goes a long way. Anyway, to wrap it up, while Reload does tumble into the pitfall of being another version of Persona 3 that we can all compare and contrast endlessly to the point that FemMC fans want to drop Aigis in the bathtub with them, when I get the itch to replay through Persona 3 again, I know which version I'm going for. You know, in the era of remakes, it's interesting to see the sheer variety of creative liberties that can be infused into a classic game. Some remakes go totally gloves off banana modes in an attempt to reach the game's full potential, while others play things very close to the original's chess in the name of preservation. Regardless of the approach, though, it's always very apparent when a remake has respect for the original, as they tend to honor the core of what made that original classic to begin with. Where that core appeal lies, though, is different for each person. But I don't tend to view older great games as some sacred relic that can never be improved or changed. Rather, I see them as fundamental blueprints for brilliant concepts that can be readapted into fresh, albeit familiar experiences for new and old fans to enjoy. Now, there's still a lot I could say about Reload in regards to how it shaved off some of its sandpaper soul to fit into the remake box, or how Atlus' insistence on refurbishing the past ain't breaking any old habits, it's just making them more expensive, but I'ma pace myself for now, as this won't be the last video on the topic, I promise. But taking into account the good, the bad, and the funky, overall, Reload just helps preserve and deepen the Persona 3 narrative so that it can be enjoyed more easily. Now a whole new generation can better appreciate the message of persevering with hope in your heart despite knowing the inevitable comes for us all. So until next time, gamers, toodles!